She's one hell of a catch, Backlash. Twain had a water bottle filled with snow pressed against the back of his head with his hoof, icing the large lump that adorned the back of his skull thanks to Longbow. Some fine legs on her. Watch it! Skyline warned with a growl as Longbow's magic plated the beans, cornmeal, and rat hog bacon onto our plates. The grease in the pan's still hot, so if you still are feeling cold, by the way, keep talking, and I'll make sure you are nice and toasty. As soon as the plate Longbow's magic held touched down, I buried my muzzle into the steaming dish. Wow, Backlash, doesn't that hurt? I quickly shook my head as I screamed internally from the pain that near boiling grease on the roof of my mouth. Normally I'd take my time, but my body was freezing, and I was damned hungry. The clock in my pip vision clicked over to noon, and I knew that we needed to get a move on here as soon as we could. Skyline poured the grease into the empty beans can and set it aside for later, tossing the dirty pan into the sink with a clang before joining us at the table. Hey Twain, you were over at Tenpony. Did you happen to see Carlotta at all? Sky's voice was less casual than she offered. The tones of worry were painfully obvious in her voice. Even so, I'm curious if the doc found a way to speed up the process of healing. I kept my ears perked up as I slurped the last bit of corn off my plate. Twain didn't even stop eating to answer, apparently quite adept at speaking with a full muzzle. Apparently, yes. I spent quite a bit of time avoiding her, actually. I try to never let myself get injured the same way twice, and my cheek still stings from where she hit me. As he finished, Sky grit her teeth in anger, and while I wondered why, I could see the pain, plain as day, that there was disappointment in her eyes. Sky? Longbow spoke softly from across the table. Is everything all right? It's fine. Dr. Fitz had Ditzy bring him some Hydra when she came back from Friendship City, and he offered Carlotta a choice. Sky's mood jumped from anger to relief, to fear, before it returned back to anger. She knows what it's done to you, Backlash, and I hoped that she would have chosen not to use it. Sky got up and walked towards the door to the roof, stopping as she hoofed at the handle. I just need a few minutes to think some things over. I'll be ready to go when you are. She disappeared through the door to the room, and the room dropped into an uneasy silence. Twain let out a deep belch as he finished his meal, leaning back and looking as content across his muzzle. So Backlash, about that payment. Yeah, just hold that thought. I wiped my muzzle clean and took a step back from the table, turning and heading towards the third-floor room. Just give me a minute. I hoofed the door open, not sure what I could say to Sky to help, but we can't lose focus on a fight like this one coming up. Stepping through the door into the freezing mid-air, I found Sky perched on the edge of the third floor, gazing off into the distance through the ruins. Among the toppled buildings and snow-covered rubble heaps, the skyscrapers of Manhattan stood as monoliths to Ponykind's past. Among the ones that I could see from our vantage point was the Ministry Morale building, tucked towards the rear, almost as if to hide, trying to downplay its role in the events of my life. I sat down with her, just taking a moment to take everything in. You know, she started, sounding like she was off in her own little world. I've hated the last month. Everything seems to have gone wrong. We've seen so much suffering. We've nearly died, and then we lost Brass. Carlotta's made it all worth it to me. I know. I shrugged. Throughout everything, the one good thing that came out of it for me is Longbow. She nodded, but kept her gaze averted. Carlotta, though. I don't know if she wants to settle down with me. As she spoke, I could see the muscles around her muzzle tense, as a great longing filled her eyes. A longing I haven't seen since Mother died. She has reservations about raising Pallet. I'll let her tell you if she feels like talking about it, but I can't tell you how much the fights relieve her stress. I can feel it on her when we're close. I can't say for certain, but I think she opted to use the Hydra for the enjoyment fighting gives her. She hasn't been thinking of the consequences it might have. I didn't think that one was going to be an issue. Sky, you know Dr. Fitz said my mutation... Her sudden piercing gaze made the words trail off from my muzzle. Her flames of anger, I knew well, but this look was much different. How many do you think she's taken in her line of work? Where's the reward in taking that much risk, using just one? Her muzzle trembled slightly as she spit her words out in such a disdain and blind hatred. In that moment, I understood her look and smiled. I let out a chuckle and reached out, putting a hoof around Sky. The reward, I would think, is you. Sky looked away as I spoke, her true motives having been revealed. You know I would endure 1,000 mutations all for you, even if it meant I needed to die to keep my family safe. I would choose that option in a heartbeat. What I said was only half what I thought, knowing that if it came down to it, and I needed to sacrifice myself to stop 42, then it's not a choice, rather just what needs to be done. I pulled her close inside. Now come on, let's go see her. If you really want, you can fly on ahead and get some privacy. No. Skyline's decisive reply startled me as she whispered and whipped her head around. I said no more splitting up, and not even seeing Carlotta can override that. She pulled herself away and strode across the snow-covered roof. That being said, it would be nice if I could get a few minutes alone with her once we arrive. I'm sure the time it'll take for you to barter what little we have away will be good enough. She took one last look back at me and gave me the faintest hint of a smile. Thank you, though. Your advice matters to me, Backlash. Her muzzle dropped into a frown. But I hope you know that you're wrong. You don't have to suffer for us. Not when we can be there to help share the burden. With soft hoof steps and a quick flutter of her wings, she dipped down the stairway and went back inside. I was left sitting alone on the rooftop. I turned my gaze back to the Ministry Tower, while Skyline's word resonated through my thoughts. There had been so much suffering already, so much death brought on about my own hooves. Even with their strength, I'm afraid that the deaths of the souls I've racked up would threaten to crush us all. The 28 from Ponyville, the 7 from Whiny, and Harmony alone were too many when this whole adventure started. Add on the innocents that died when Bishop's tower fell, Captain Tempest, the one in the pool when it exploded, and Brass. No. I refuse to let any pony bear those burdens because they are mine, and mine alone. I have to keep going and I have to keep fighting, or their deaths will be nothing. They must mean something, even if their death wasn't worth whatever that meaning is. I have to give them my best, and try to make up for the sins that I've committed. After scrapping together every cap we could find, pulling our savings out of the safe, and packing everything we thought we might find useful into the Marauder, I was fairly certain we were ready. We made our final preparations to go. I took a last look through the garage for anything we missed. I took the party cannon into my hooves and looked at it longingly, wishing it would work just one more time. I stuffed it into my saddlebags on the off chance it did work again, not wanting to leave anything whatsoever that could be helpful. Now the bare shelves and strewn about junk was all that met my eyes, and I couldn't help but want to apologize to the old man. I'd failed him, closing the caravan service because of the stupid decisions I've made. I wanted to believe he'd understand my reasons. We all piled into the front seat of the Marauder, even Skyline, and took off towards Tenpony. The snow that blanketed the thick layer across the city proved annoying to drive through, but the extra weight from our supplies gave us the traction we needed to keep at a decent speed, pulling up to Tenpony only about a half hour of eventless driving. It seems that today even the gangers around here know where we were going, and don't wish to intervene with whatever fate had waiting for us ahead. As I pulled the Marauder close to the front of the building, the furious look of the building administration mare caught my attention as she carefully made her way down the icy front steps. No, you can just take your misery and leave us be, she shouted, trudging her way through the snow towards us. I shut the marauder off and stepped out with the others, doing my best to smile and avoid her gaze. Every time you show up, something bad happens, so I refuse to let you into the tower. As she spoke, I made my way around the back of the marauder, hoofing open the door and pulling out the first box of components to sell. Are you listening to me? You need to leave. Now! Skellen groaned and turned towards the mayor. Look, we just have some things to trade, and then we'll leave. She flared her wings out as Longbow levitated one of the boxes of electronic scraps onto her back. You will do no such thing! The administration's mayor stammered. I moved from being politely ignoring her, to just plainly tuning her out now, and walked through the snow towards the building, looking up to the two shivering door guards who seemed unsure as to what to do. No! What are you doing? Stop right there! Her magic lifted the box off my back and dumped it to the ground, scattering the sensitive components that were probably now all ruined by contacting the snow. Move another hoof and I'll have you detained! I turned my gaze as I felt the need to beat the mare rise inside of me. I looked back just fast enough to see Twain give her a strong left hook that connected to the side of her muzzle. She dropped into the snow like a sack of rotten potatoes, and lay there unmoving as the guards in front of me struggled to ready their weapons. Look, you don't want to do that. You know who I am, correct? I called out to them, forcing them to stop and think for a moment. The small nods I received came as welcome signs that they knew what was at stake. We meant what we said. We're just going to do some trading, and then we're off. While we probably shouldn't have hit that mare. I eyed back to Twain, who froze with a nervous grin as he gathered a box of old toasters. She'll be fine as long as she's moved inside and kept warm. The two guard ponies looked at each other, and after a moment, both came to the conclusion and reslung their weapons. They walked down the steps to gather the unconscious mare and took her inside. I felt Longbow put the top half of my tool chest across my back, the heavy weight of it not nearly as annoying as the fact that the metal was ice cold. She stepped up beside me with a loving smile that made my heart pound, and kept moving forward towards the doors. I smiled back at her and followed, carefully making my way up the icy steps and towards the boarded-up lobby doors. Once inside, we walked through the halls towards the market, when something unexpected happened. The busy halls of the merchant tower seemed to slow down and freeze in place as Longbow and I worked towards a tower grocer's. The normally loud market turned silent as every pony simply stopped and observed us. The ones who spoke barely whispered. I wasn't sure if it was out of fear or out of respect, but they cleared a path for us. Preparing for war? The voice finally broke the silence, was one that I'd missed hearing the last day. The crowd around the stairs across the way parting wider than they had for us, as Carlotta limped forward. I flashed her a smile and stopped so she could get to me, while Longbow disappeared into the shop. You'd better be, 'cause I'm itching to murder some assholes after having missed that fight at the bridge. The mention of the botched bridge attack wiped away the joy of seeing her again. We're gearing up for Red Wing. It's 42's last stand, and I don't plan on leaving until the ponies there are safe, and she lies dead. My words made Carlotta's face light up, and she actually looked like she was excited for it. But that one word snapped her to complete attention. If you aren't at 100%, I don't want you there. I can't afford to have you distracted by pain, anger, or anything else in this fight. More than ever, I need you to show the detachment you had when I met you. Carlotta sneered at that. I've been fighting for a long time, Backlash. Don't tell me how to do my job. She prodded me with a talon and took a step forward, in a move to look more imposing. As for being at 100% and ready, I'm a thistledown. My family never lets an injury or 10 get in the way of a job. Not until it's over. Give me a gun and point me at that pink bitch. We'll see who comes out on top. I just shook my head with a smile and put my hoof around her, pulling her into a hug she wasn't expecting. Thank you, Carlotta. We can't do this without you. Her feathers bristled with my words before she ultimately relaxed and I let her go. Skylar needs to talk to you. Please remember, whatever she says, it's because we're a family. I looked up to her, seeing that her tough gaze had softened. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some bartering to do. I turned away from the only griffin I'll ever respect, and my mind was now clear as I headed towards the old world food market. The moment I stepped through the door, Longbow gave me a smile and trot past with a large mesh bag of ammunition in tow that looked to be every bullet the store probably had in stock. As the door shut behind me, I approached the counter and gave a nod to the tool chest on my back. The shopkeeper was a younger unicorn I knew as Goldbit, who just rolled his eyes at the prospect of losing any more cap today, but across his face sat the look of guilt and shame. For the life of me, I couldn't exactly tell why. What do you need for it? His horn glowed with a soft green as he lifted the heavy item effortlessly, setting it down behind the counter. His question threw me off, being so far from the start of negotiation, that I had to take a moment to make sure he was just asking me how much. Look, every pony in the tower knows what you're doing. We have families to look after, and we want to help, but we can't go with you. So tell me what you need. I assume you just sold us all your ammo, so next I need food? He gave a quick nod and started pulling all the cans off his shelves, setting them one at a time onto a large sack. We need any food you can spare in case of the survivors of Red Wing need it. I watched as he finished filling the bag, leaving only a meager amount of food left on the shelves. A box of which caught my eye. I walked over and snatched at it with my muzzle, sitting on the counter and imagining that a full box of fancy buck snack cakes might be a good last meal if it came down to it. I'll pay for these normally. I hoofed through my saddlebags, drawing out the sack of caps, and I retrieved from our safe. To my surprise, Goldbit gave a chuckle and waved my caps away. I thought you only liked the donuts from the bakery. Yeah. For some reason I felt nervous about buying a whole box of snack cakes for myself, and the fact that I was still overweight just hung in my mind, making it worse. So, what do? Therefore my special sun pony. I blurted out and almost face-toothed. Yes, because lying to cover up the fact that you want something that tastes good before you're potentially head off to your death makes all the sense in the world. Yeah. He shook his head with a smile, the sarcasm oozing from his expression, as it only served to make me feel ashamed at even trying to lie. Instead of just coming clean, I felt compelled to dig myself even deeper, my actions reminding me of the bit of normality I had left behind me months ago. It felt good to have what I could consider a normal transaction with some pony, one where I didn't desperately need a certain supply or have to barter for the safety of others. Even with how I felt now, I embraced the shame of a simple lie, holding dearly to the feeling of being normal again. She's pregnant. I gave an exasperated sigh, trying to defend the lie I created. This only brought a wider smile to Goldbit's muzzle, and the guilty look he had when I stepped up here was gone completely. Uh-huh. He stifled another chuckle, and I knew he saw through my thinly veiled attempt at a lie, and was just enjoying himself now, seeing as I was doing the same. Bag it. I rolled my eyes and looked towards the door with a smile slowly creeping across my face. Big time. He untied the sack and tossed the box in. You know, Backlash, to be honest, Dad was really looking forward to you moving to the tower. He knew that you'd be a great rival of his if you had, and that you could drum up some much-needed business around here. His voice was taking a more serious tone. The sadness he reflected across his expression told me of his sincerity. You're a good stallion, Backlash. Every pony here knows it, even if they don't have the will to say it. I can't speak for the others, but I think we should be out helping. We're just too afraid to lose what we've got. I envy how you can go out there, knowing that you might never come back. He held his hoof out across the counter for me. Thanks, Gold. It means a lot to Sky and I to have praise like that. I turned back and took his forehoof in my own, and gave a firm shake. Though, don't be so sure I won't be moving in here. Even if I have to rebuild my business from the ground up, I'll be back. And I got another smile from him, even if it was only a small one to match the hope in his apple-green eyes. You'll get your rivalry. It just might take a few years to build back up. Days, months, years. I don't know how long I have left if Dr. Fitz can't get to me with the treatment he wants. As long as 42 falls, I will try to fight to hold on to life. The door of the shop shook open as Twain stood on the other side, with the back half of the tools chest, straining under its weight as he looked at me pleadingly. Why the hell had he chosen to bring it in by himself, over the toasters? Little help? He groaned and offered a forced smile to Goldbit, whose horn lit up and gently tilted the box from his back, and stood it on its wheels. With a sigh of relief and a wipe of his brow, he flopped onto the floor as the magic wheeled itself into the shop. Thanks. It weighed a ton. He caught his breath and stood up, nodding to me. Everything's out of the Marauder. We just need to bring it all in. Whatever you need, Backlash. It's yours. Take it. Goldbit gave a sigh. Consider it a loan, though. I expect you to hold up what you said about moving into here. And until then, just remember you owe me. He had a bit of his normal eagerness back in his voice, and as he levitated the food over to me, I simply nodded and walked over to Twain. We need armor, weapons. Anything and everything might be useful against 42. The gears in my head snapped out a reminder, and reflexively stunk my hoof back into my saddlebags. I threw out the gold rectangle that I owed him. Here. You've more than earned it. Thanks. Twain took it with a smile, staring at it for a moment before he looked up to me. I was wrong about you. His words caught me off guard, and I just sat and stared at him quizzically. Back in Futura, I said that you were no fun, and I was wrong. You're more than just another uninteresting asshole. You know that? He picked himself up off the floor, putting the gold object into his own bag. After this is over, if you ever need a merc on your side, call me first. Thank you, Twain. I gave him a pat on the shoulder and left the store, heading back out towards the Marauder. It took me a moment, but I noticed that the halls had cleared out, and there wasn't another pony in sight. Had they fled in shared fear of what the administration's mayor said? Or had we really made that much of an impact on them as Goldbit had said? Stepping outside again, Pallet jumped around in the snow and fluttered her wings, as Dr. Fitz waved to me from the Marauder. Can we build a snow pony, Mr. Giggles? Pallet's shrill voice made him cringe, but before he could answer, the tiny filly noticed I had come outside and was bounding around towards me. Hi there, Uncle Backlash. You want to build a snow pony with me? Uncle? I scrunched my muzzle up at the motion. Yeah, Miss Carlotta told my aunt that she wanted Miss Sky to be my mom now. Pallet's face seemed to radiate unending joy as she stood in front of me beaming, but her eyes told me that as enthusiastic as she was, she still mourned for her father. It was something that she would have to deal with as she grew up. At least, gets to become her own mare. And Sky was as good of a choice as any pony to show her how to be strong. So that makes you my uncle. So it does. I ruffled her mane with my forehoof, pondering Carlotta's decision when Sky made it sound like she was against it. Figuring out Sky and Carlotta about it later, I looked over to Dr. Fitz. Enjoying the first snowfall? I set the bag of food down, content to wait for the others here. Honestly, I am. This time of year always brings back the best out in ponies, and the snowy months always have the fewest injuries. He rubbed the back of his head with a smile. Though, little fillies who catch colds playing the snow are always an issue. He sent a playful glare to Pallet, who fired back by sticking out her tongue at him. I wanted to give you this backlash. Carlotta kept going on and on about how she was the most badass griffins in her family, have always had at least one eye, and wear a patch. She wouldn't stop complaining until I gave you one. He floated a small trapezoid-shaped plastic eye cover with leather straps on it to my head, securing it with a buckle. How's it look? I reached up and hoofed at it, feeling the strange new addition to the hard edges rubbing against my skin. And why is it plastic? I thought they were always made out of cloth. The plastic should help keep you from poking at the socket when your depth perception sticks you with the sharp end of something. He shrugged. As for how you look, I can't really say. I'm a doctor, not a fashionista. You look like a pirate! Pallet screeched, forcing a cringe and a shudder from Doc and I. Just like the books your friend read. Mr. Dipstick told me that you found them for him a long while ago, and that I should read as much as possible to get smart. Incoming! Carlotta's voice filled the air shortly before a pair of snowballs exploded against the side of my face, sending me to the ground. Pallet screamed in delight as she was showered with powder from the griffin attack, the shock of the whole event going right over her head. As I recovered, I watched as Skyline swooped down next to me with a content look on her face. Sorry if we caught you by surprise. She spoke with a blush to Dr. Fitz, who just sighed and shrugged, mumbling to himself that we're all crazy for wanting to stay out in the cold before he trudged back towards the doors. He stopped as I got up and shook myself off, turning with a wave. Take care to come back in one piece, Backlash. He called out to me, competing with the fanatic screams and laughs of the Snowmageddon going on behind me. And for once, I hope to see you back here soon. Continuing up the steps, he opened the doors and disappeared into the tower. Sky looked around nervously as I turned around. Backlash? About Pallet? She bit her lower lip as she paused, hesitating and looking conflicted. Mercifully for her, the worry of telling me was misplaced thanks to Carlotta. You'll be a great mother. I reached out and pulled her into a stiff hug that caught her by surprise. Both you and Carlotta will raise her to be an amazing mare. I'm sure of it. Skylar relaxed in my hold, rubbing my good side softly. Thank you. She sniffled and wrapped her wings around me. It had been a long journey for all of us, and I'm not sure that there was any pony it had affected more than Skyline. In that time, she had transformed from the sister who thought we only needed to be tough to protect me, into a pony who wanted to care for those she called her family over anything else. My moment of reflection was broken when a snowball smacked Skyline's wing, and Pal let out a small eep before hiding behind Carlotta. Sky smiled and took a step back, as I knew what started to run through her head. Skyline, dear sister, what do you say we show these ruffians what our family is made of? I spoke loudly, keeping my eyes focused on the little filly giggling behind Carlotta's leg. But the response I got was not one I'd been prepared for, as a snowball exploded on my muzzle. I looked over in an outrage at Sky, who crossed her forehooves and stuck her tongue out at me as she floated over to the two others. So, that's how it's gonna be, huh? 3 against 1? I'll take those odds. Carlotta smirked and used her cheater talons to quickly form a snowball, hoisting it up and tossing it at me ferociously. I knew she normally reserved for combat. I flinched as it came at me, but was surprised to see it slow down as an aura enveloped it. Carlotta's smirk dropped to a grimace. Shame on you, Carlotta. Longbow used her measure to propel it back at her. The snowball splattered against her chest, as she didn't even try to dodge it. At least make it a fair fight. Both the love of my life and Twain stepped up to my side, the both of them dropping their bags next to the bag of food that I had set down. Longbow glanced quickly to Twain and I, with a sinister grin on her face. Let's make this quick, boys, and then we'll hit the road. That started the most brutal of snowball fights the likes the wasteland would never see again.